stop scrolling for a second, because this isn't just drama. This feels like something that was meant to happen, and someone tried to warn about it. Claressa Shields was in one of the best moments of her life. A champion, respected, focused, and finally talking about something different: love, family, a future outside the ring. In a recent interview, she was smiling, calm, and confident, saying she planned to have a baby next year. Everything sounded organized, stable, real. She didn't sound confused. She sounded sure, like she had finally found the right person. But then, less than 48 hours later, everything flipped. Cheating rumors hit the internet out of nowhere. A younger woman's name started floating around. Screenshots began circulating, and suddenly that peaceful future she described didn't feel solid anymore. It felt fragile, like it could fall apart at any second. The timing was too close, too sudden, and that's when people started remembering something. Remy Ma had already said all of this months ago. Back then, nobody took her seriously. She was loud, emotional, calling things out in a way people labeled as bitter or messy. But now her words are starting to sound different. Not emotional, but accurate. She didn't just complain. She described a pattern: how he moves, how he presents himself, how he makes a woman feel like she's the only one, until things slowly shift behind the scenes. And the wild part is, Claressa didn't just ignore the warning. She pushed back. She defended him publicly. She made it clear that her situation wasn't the same, that this was different. But one moment changed how people saw everything. Remy revealed that she once picked up his phone while he was asleep, and he was on a call with Claressa. When Claressa heard her voice, she immediately hung up. No questions, no explanation, just silence. And that reaction stuck with people, because that's not how someone reacts when everything is clear and honest. That's how someone reacts when something feels off, but they don't want to face it. After that, Remy started revealing more, talking about how the relationship people saw online wasn't real anymore. How things had been broken behind the scenes for a long time, how money, image, and control were playing a bigger role than people realized. And then she said something that hit hard. She called him the lowest earning man she had ever been with. That wasn't just shade. It was a warning about the situation Claressa might be stepping into, but by then, Claressa was already emotionally invested. She had already defended him, already spoken about building a future, and walking away from that isn't easy. So instead, she stood firm, even as everything around her started to shake. And that's where the story really begins to feel less like love and more like something she was warned about but didn't fully see in time. Once everything was out in the open, the situation didn't calm down. It got louder, messier, and way more complicated than anyone expected, because now it wasn't just one person talking. Papoose finally responded. And when he did, he didn't hold back. He came with his own version of the story, his own receipts, his own timeline that painted a completely different picture. According to him, he wasn't the villain people were making him out to be. In fact, he positioned himself as the one who had been loyal, supportive, and consistent when it mattered the most. He talked about the years when Remy was locked up, said he put his life on hold, walked away from opportunities, and showed up for her in ways most people wouldn't. Visiting her constantly, taking care of responsibilities outside, staying solid when things were at their lowest. If even part of that is true, it changes things, because now you're not looking at a simple story of bad guy versus good guy. You're looking at something more real. Two people with history, pain, and completely different perspectives on what actually happened. He also flipped the financial narrative, claimed that he wasn't the one being carried, that she was the one who needed help, that the story about him being broke wasn't just exaggerated, it was false. And just like that, the audience is stuck in the middle. Two stories, two versions of the truth, and no clear way to know which one is fully real. But here's the thing that makes this situation different. Even with all the back and forth, the timeline doesn't lie. Because while these arguments are happening, Claressa is still right there in the middle of it, not watching from the outside, living it in real time. And that's what makes it uncomfortable to watch, because you can almost see the moment where things start clicking for her, but she's not ready to say it out loud yet. And that's where the idea of the trap starts making more sense. Not in a dramatic, obvious way. Not like something planned overnight, but in a slow, layered way. The kind where everything feels real in the beginning, where the attention feels genuine, where the connection feels different until it doesn't. Remy's earlier words start hitting differently now, not because they sound nicer, but because they're lining up with what's happening. The pattern she described doesn't feel like a random guess anymore. It feels familiar, repetitive. Older man, younger, successful woman, a relationship that moves fast emotionally, big promises, big plans, and then suddenly confusion, chaos, and questions. It's not new. We've seen this before. And that's what makes this story uncomfortable, because it's not just about these three people anymore. It starts to feel like something bigger, something a lot of people have either seen or experienced themselves. That moment where you realize the warning you ignored wasn't noise, it was truth. And the hardest part? Accepting it means accepting that you were wrong, that maybe the person you defended didn't deserve it. That maybe the future you imagined isn't real, that maybe someone you didn't like was actually trying to help you. That's a tough pill to swallow, and you can see why Claressa might not be ready to take it yet. Because walking away now doesn't just mean ending a relationship. It means admitting that everything leading up to this point might have been built on something shaky, and nobody wants that. So instead, things stay in this weird, tense space, not fully broken, not fully stable, just uncertain. Meanwhile, the internet keeps watching. Every post, every rumor, every small detail gets picked apart. People choosing sides, arguing, debating who's right and who's wrong. But the truth is, it's probably not that simple, because real life rarely is. And in the middle of all this noise, there's one question that keeps coming back. What if Remy wasn't trying to tear her down? What if she was trying to show her what was coming? Because if that's the case, then this isn't just drama. It's a story repeating itself. At this point, this story doesn't even feel like celebrity gossip anymore. It feels personal. Because if you remove the fame and the names, this is something a lot of people understand. That moment where everything looks perfect on the outside, but inside, something doesn't feel right and you ignore it. Claressa Shields is not someone people expect to be in this position. She's strong, disciplined, focused. She built her life by reading situations, staying sharp, and never letting her guard down. But love doesn't follow those rules. You can be unbeatable in your career and still be vulnerable in your personal life. And that's what makes this hard to watch, because it feels like she might already sense it, the timing, the rumors, the things that don't fully add up. But accepting it out loud, that's a completely different battle, because once you accept it, everything changes. You can't go back to believing everything is perfect. You can't ignore the warning anymore. You can't defend something that doesn't feel right. And that's why people stay longer than they should. Not because they're weak, but because facing the truth means letting go of something they believed in. And that's never easy. But here's the thing, this story isn't over yet. There's still a version where she steps back, looks at everything clearly, and chooses herself, where she realizes that love shouldn't feel confusing this early, shouldn't come with this many questions. And if she walks away now, that's not a loss. That's control. That's strength in a different form. But if she stays, hoping things will settle or make sense later, then this could turn into the same pattern people were warning her about from the beginning. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because now it's not about who's right or wrong anymore. It's about what she chooses next. Because sooner or later, the truth always shows up through actions, not words. And when it does, it forces a decision, one that could either break the cycle or repeat it all over again.